In his wildest dreams, Command Sergeant Major Bradley Jones never thought he would make a career out of the military. Through the setbacks, the disappointments, and the trials, there were many life-changing moments, including the death of his first wife when he was 37 years old and had three young children. Now, many of us are going to relate to Bradley's story in a very different way, but each of us will be encouraged by his interview.
Have you ever felt like giving up, quitting, throwing in the towel? Welcome to Never Ever Give Up Hope featuring Carol Graham. She's an author, health coach, and motivational speaker. Backed into a corner multiple times in her life, Carol shares with you stories on how she overcame some of the toughest obstacles a person can go through in life, but refused to give up hope. Rather than admit defeat, an opportunity was presented, and it involves each and every one of you. Carol will feature spectacular guests who will share their messages of hope, encouragement, and their inspiration to prove why life's adversities only make you stronger. And now, welcoming the host of the show, here's Carol Graham.
Bradley Jones, Command Sergeant Major, enlisted in the United States Army in 1984 and served until 1988 as a ground control approach radar repairman. Upon completion of his initial enlistment and a break in service, he joined the Utah Army National Guard in 1993. His military awards and decorations include the Bronze Star Medal, Army Commendation Medal, Army Achievement Medal, Good Conduct Medal, Armed Forces Reserve Medal, Afghanistan Campaign Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, Army Reserve Component Achievement Medal, and the Master Aviation Crewmember Badge. Wow, those are lots of things to hang on the office wall. Then Bradley, during his civilian career, he now works for the FAA as an airway transportation system specialist in the Service Operations Center of the Salt Lake Air Route Traffic Control Center. Wow, I am impressed. Good morning, Bradley.
Good morning, Carol. How are you?
Did you recognize the guy as I was reading off all those medals?
Sometimes when I see that list, I think, especially the Bronze Star Medal, like people ask me about that, and I've told them I didn't win that award. My soldiers won that award for me.
Excellent answer. Excellent. I understand that. So let's start with the story that I know my audience is waiting to hear, and that is what happened when you lost your wife.
Well, one of the main themes found in my book, and I know we'll talk about that later in the conversation, but is adjusting to um, a major fork in the road in one's life, and you can't really have a bigger fork in the road than to suffer the sudden and unexpected death of a significant other, and in this case, my wife. We'd been married, I think, 11 years by that time, and um, you know, I'd never experienced from one moment to the next in my life where all of a sudden your life as you knew it sh- shifts 180 degrees, and just changes in the blink of an eye. And I think for the first probably 4 or 5 months after her death, I had one thought that just kept coming back to me, and that was just, I can't believe this happened to me. I can't believe this happened to
Mm,
me. And I think, you know, and like I said in my book, I talk about the points that we all reach in our life. I mean, who hasn't had a major shift in
Hmm.
direction? You think things are going a certain way, and you're looking ahead as best you can, and then all of a sudden, the scenery just absolutely changes. And um, and I think one of the things that I really feel strongly about is that, um, as painful as some of those things can be, there's always a silver lining in those experiences, and I would not be the person I am today had I
Hmm.
not gone through what I went
Right.
through.
And how did you handle it? After the initial devastation and you have to get your life back together, you've got three small children who are depending on you. How did you do that?
Um, you know, I honestly, there was several points during the months following her passing that I kind of stepped back and I looked, at um, my life from a certain perspective, and I realized that I had amazing friends. I had amazing family members who absolutely stepped up and just, you know, made incredibly impactful, gave service to me, supported me. I never I never had a time when I felt like, like the Savior had his hand on my shoulder, like I did when I went through that experience. Like I felt like so many times like somebody was walking beside me with their arm around me.
Which gave you peace?
Absolutely. That's the kind of peace that transcends all things. That um, it's not coming from me. It's coming from elsewhere.
Now, there are going to be people in the audience who will relate to that part of your story. Do you have something now going forward that you can remember going backward that really, besides the knowledge of having, your Heavenly Father with you, is there anything else that you did or that you can give as advice to someone who may be suffering like that?
Absolutely. There there were so many things that occurred throughout the months following Randy's death. Experience where um, one of my best friends called me from Iraq, from Balad, Iraq, in the middle of the ground war in 2003, and um, to find out how I was doing. And it didn't occur to me until probably a number of years later. I thought, I didn't get a hold of him. I wonder who got a hold of him. And so one night over dinner, I asked him, "Who told you that Randy passed away?" And his his wife, who was in Germany, he deployed with a, a regular army unit out of Germany. His wife had a dream in Germany. She called him on his satellite phone and said, "Call Brad, something's happened."
Hmm.
And that, I mean, that kind of stuff lets you know that, Heavenly Father knows each one of us. And, um, that comfort and that knowledge, I think, is, uh, what got me through and what can get other people through some of the toughest trials that of this life.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'm sure that that triggered memories as well for you. So, moving fast forward, why did you join the military initially?
Well, um, I my best friend joined, um, Paul, uh, and he had already joined. And one day, he said, "Hey, I have to stop by the recruiting office to drop off some paperwork or something." And so I just happened to be with him, and so I went in with him. And of course, recruiters being recruiters, they were like, "Hey, what are your plans?" And I honestly didn't really have any plans, so they just said, "Well, why don't you just take a practice ASFAB, which everybody that joins the military has to take the official ASFAB, the aptitude test." And And so I took the practice ASVAB, and they said, you scored really well on it. You could pretty much do whatever you want in the military. And so we sat. I went and took the official ASVAB, and then we sat down, and they said, here are some positions and some things to do, and one of the things that I remember vividly as a kid was my parents taking us to the airport to watch planes land at Portland International Airport, which sits right beside the Columbia River. And so I all of a sudden they popped up with working on radar, and it just absolutely clicked. And I just said, if you get me that job, I'll join. And the rest is, as they say, is history.
You did quit though at one point, didn't you? And then
Hmm.
re-enlist. So what happened there?
When I got towards the end of that 4 year enlistment, I really wanted to follow in my brother's. I have one older brother, and he'd served a mission. Had been a missionary for 2 years, and I honestly just felt like I saw the change in him. I saw how much it helped him to grow as a person. Spiritually, it helped him grow in so many other ways. And I I thought, if I don't do this now, I'll never do it. I was still young, and you know, I had the some money saved up from my enlistment, from 4 years, and I honestly just thought I need to. If I'm going to do it, I have to do it now, because I was 22 at the time, and so I had a break in service. I got out and put in the paperwork to go be a missionary, and got called to go to Argentina, of all places, and went down to Argentina and had an absolutely amazing experience down there that has been with me ever since.
That's quite the switch, isn't it? In
Uh, Absolutely. And it's interesting because um, going, to be a missionary and kind of the regimented lifestyle, well, that was second nature to me. After being in the Army for 4 years, that that it was such a natural transition for me that it it wasn't a huge adjustment for me at all, um, and so my 4 years paid huge dividends for my personal self discipline and motivation as a missionary. To get up, you're on your own. You can be as lazy as you want, basically. Um, but I got, it was like, let's go to work. Let's give service to these great people of Argentina. So um, the military was definitely gave me a leg up on being a missionary.
Now, when you were part of the Apache helicopter battalion, that was at the same time that September 11th happened. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And how did that, if at all, affect you?
We were on a deployment. Uh, our We took a task force of I think 12 Apaches to Kuwait, and we helped with Operation Southern Watch, which was the no-fly zone over Iraq following the Gulf War. Um, and so we were in an operational mode that was very high op tempo over there. And then September 11th happened. I was on a I was on a flight line. It was late afternoon in Kuwait, and we were working on an Apache, and we saw the base security racing around in their vehicles, and they took up positions at the guard shacks, at the corners and along the perimeter with their weapons drawn. And we kind of watched and thought, what, are they doing an exercise? Or so I told my guys, hey, keep working on this. I'm going to go find out what's going on. So I went into the Raytheon trailer, and there were probably 6 people in that office, and they were all just sitting with blank stares on their face. And I walked in, and I immediately sensed something was wrong. What's going
Hmm.
on? And they told me what happened, and I sat in there and basically heard the reports of the second plane hitting, and went and grabbed my guys and said, "Hey, something's up. Let's, come." Got my guys together, talked to them, and just, said, "Hey, I remember my grandparents talking about Pearl Harbor and what a national shock that was to everybody in America." And then we went over to get something to eat at the chow hall, and I just remember seeing people in the chow hall. I mean, normally the chow halls, got conversation. There's a level of noise of conversation going on.
Hmm. Hmm.
Totally silent, and all these, huge big screens up on the walls, all, Fox News, CNBC, MSNBC, all these news programs showing all the footage and stuff. And I remember making eye contact with a number of people,
Hmm.
a number of other soldiers in the chow hall, and the only way I can describe it was there was a look of resolve on everybody's face.
Really? No, normally I would think you would say a look of fear. So why do you think resolve? Because this goes to now the different things that you have experienced in your life that is related to fear in the military. So
Hmm.
why would you say resolve? I'm just curious.
Resolve because, as a soldier, you're trained to to perform a specific function, um, as a a part of a greater mission. One of the things that I talked about, with my soldiers, because there is obviously an element of fear in going, on a combat
Mhm.
deployment
Mhm.
or being in combat. And, when I spoke with my soldiers, and I told them, "Hey, fear is a normal part, or can be a normal
Mhm.
part of what we do. But what I want you to focus on is I want you to focus on just doing your job. Don't
Hmm.
try to win the war in your mind. There's people higher up that are on that, that are doing that right now. You focus on doing your job, and I promise you that as you do that, you'll have this inner strength to get through, whatever's ahead." Um, and and so, we train to do, uh, as an Apache mechanic, you train to fix the Apache, um, and um, as a armament guy, for me, personally, that was my job. We took care of all the electronics on board the Apache, all the weapon system. We loaded the weapons and stuff. And so when you train and do that over and over again, um, you know, you if you find yourself in combat, your training takes over. And so, the resolve was just, I have a job, I know how to do it, and I'm being called on now to actually do it for real.
I really like that what you said, and I think you could apply that to virtually any area of your life, including teaching children, and that is don't try to win the war in your mind. Just do your
Hmm.
job. That is excellent. Excellent. We're going to take a quick 15-second break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about your book. We're going to talk about what makes a leader and what you can share with people to encourage them in that area. We'll be right back.
Carol Graham would like to show you the path from misery to miraculous triumph in her fast-paced memoir, Battered Hope. She relates her determination to succeed as someone who experienced one horrendous nightmare after another. Gang raped and left for dead, loss of a child, husband falsely imprisoned, and cancer. Nothing could break her tenacity or faith. No matter what you face, heartache, loss, suffering, or injustice, Carol will illustrate how she became a victor the same way you can. The secret is to never, ever give up hope. Order your copy at Amazon or batteredhope.blogspot.com.
Bradley Jones is with me today, and he is sharing his experiences in the military, in life, and also how that his experiences can help us to become better leaders, to see ourselves as a leader. And I really liked the name of your book, which is Treading the Deep. And I thought about that, just that name, without knowing anything about you or the book for some time. And I think we can really relate. I love it. It's so catching. I think we can really relate with it because there are multiple times in our lives when we do just that. We're treading the deep, even though this may not have anything to do with what you're going to share, but I look
Mhm.
forward to that. So let's start with, first of all, how did your experiences shape you as a leader?
When I sat down and really, uh, I was asked to write a command philosophy, which is typical for sergeant majors
Hmm.
and battalion and brigade commanders, um, to have their command philosophy out there. And well, a lot of times, the command philosophy is kind of bullet, can be bullet statements and things like that. And the last commander I served with was a guy named Lieutenant Colonel Matt Bedell, and he had a really inspiring um, command philosophy. And in essence, his command philosophy was, we're made up of I think it was five specific things. We're emotional, we're physical, we're mental, and we're spiritual. Actually, four. But he addressed each one of those things, and especially as soldiers, obviously
Hmm.
we have to maintain ourselves physically, um, and mentally and emotionally. Um, you want to create balance, but he also talked about the spiritual aspect, and he would get up in front of soldiers and say, I don't care if you worship a tree, you know you need to dedicate time. That is an actual aspect of each one of us that needs attention. And so, he talked about the balance of those things, and when one gets kind of out of whack, and you might have to spend time addressing that specific one to kind of get it up and balanced with the others and stuff. Um, so he went at it from that angle, and you know, I really liked that concept that these four things make up each one of us, and they each need attention. And so I started thinking about my command philosophy, and then it kind of, I had, as a command sergeant major, you're frequently called on to speak to soldiers in large groups, and one of the things that I did from early on was I talked about some of the things that are in my book that are, I laugh about them now, but they were extremely embarrassing experiences when I was a young soldier, as a way to kind of bridge the gap between me and these young soldiers, and say, hey, I was no different than you.
Hmm.
We put our pants on the same way, and to make a connection with the young soldiers, and to basically say, if you think that when I was in your shoes that I ever thought that I would be where I'm at today, you've got another thing coming. And but I wanted to let them know that I would
Hmm.
never ask them to do something I wouldn't be willing to do myself. And good leaders lead from the front. Good leaders
Hmm.
empower others. They divest their power, um, and poor leaders consolidate power. And um, and so, as I started to think about my command philosophy, and the stories that I had told, because I'd get soldiers that would frequently, come to me and say, "Hey, Sergeant Major, can you tell us that story, you know,
Hmm.
that you told before about when you got kicked out of that leadership school, graduated with the most demerits in the history of the um, NCO Academy at Fort Bliss, Texas. And so those stories resonated, and
Right, right.
from there it just kind of went like, I, I got to. It was going to be a pamphlet at first, and then it
Oh
just
my
like
word,
exploded.
really?
Yes.
Huh. Okay, so who is it written for then?
Well, it was written for my soldiers and those that I had served with over the years as a way to say thank you and as a way to inspire others in their path in life. Initially, like I said, it was going to be a pamphlet, but one of the things that happened was I went through the Sergeant Major's Academy, which is a 2-year course, and I wrote numerous papers, and a lot of them were um, what they call personal experience papers, and so they kind of just left it up to you. And so I wrote about the things that happened to me that helped me grow as a
Mm.
person,
Hmm.
that taught me some very important and sometimes some very embarrassing lessons, and some of the humorous things. And so I had this huge body of work already, and I just started to kind of consolidate it, and then I just started to kind of connect them up, and that's basically was the rough draft for. Um, it was well beyond a pamphlet at that point.
So it's relatable.
Absolutely, absolutely. It shows one of the main themes is just that I was not the smartest soldier. I wasn't the most physically gifted soldier. You know, I was an average soldier, um, and I just stuck with it. I just stuck with it.
Who should read it?
Um, Anybody that wants to be inspired about um, overcoming life's experiences. The one thing that I've heard over and over again from those who reviewed it, and many people have gone on and given me fantastic reviews on Amazon, is if you've never had any affiliation with the military, it will be like uh, a roller coaster ride with me, beside me through a military
Hmm.
career. So if you've never um, had or known of what going to basic training is like, it will give you a front row seat. And so many people have commented that they felt like they were standing right beside me on the journey.
So it's an account, but also I'm assuming it's inspirational. Would you say that?
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the things that really was an amazing experience in writing a book was I was paired up with an amazing editor, and she is very much responsible for the storyline throughout that book, and she helped me to see how to establish the storyline, and then you just hang everything off that storyline. And um, when we were about 3/4 of the way done, she commented to me that this this book is going to make people. It will make you laugh. It will make you cry. It will make you cheer. Um, and it's about triumphing uh, the the triumphs that we can experience despite the trials.
I like that. It'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll make you cheer, and help you to triumph despite the trials.
Absolutely.
That's excellent. Now, in closing, is there anything that you want to summarize, encourage, add, subtract? Whatever you'd
Well,
like to share.
it was interesting to work with an editor, and because at one point I thought I want my soldiers to kind of know what I was like when I was growing up, and so I wrote a number of chapters about my childhood. Kind of what I was into, and I was a big skateboarder in the '70s, and um, anyways, and my editor was like, "Nope." We're starting from this when you drive down to enlist, and so all that stuff kind of got swept aside. I think having it kind of start there, and people not knowing, kind of the backstory. Interesting to connect with people that have seen what I'm interested in. I on my social media accounts, I only do positive, uplifting things.
Okay.
My posts are positive. I try to make, there's enough negativity out there.
No
I
kidding.
want to add to the positive.
And that's why we need people like you, and that's why we need books that you write. So I
Thank you.
thank you. Well, this has been enlightening, and it certainly has been encouraging, I'm sure, for the audience. And hearing things from your perspective, from the military, it just gives it an extra punch. So I really appreciate what you shared today. And again, this book will make you laugh, will make you cry, will make you cheer, and help you tell you how to triumph despite your trials. A message we all need to hear. Thank you so much, Bradley, for being on Never Ever Give Up Hope.
Awesome. Thank you, Carol. It's been an honor.
Thank you for listening to Never Ever Give Up Hope, featuring Carol Graham. Did you know that most people succeed because they are determined to? Quitting was never an option. Carol loves your comments and will respond to each one. So please subscribe and review this podcast. A rating of 5 stars would be outstanding and appreciated. Remember, if you are still here, there is always hope.